Welcome all of you to the session, SAFEZONE Project with our presenter, Brittany Williams. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Cruson. My co-host for this session is Dr. Antoinette Vicks. She'll be helping out with the chat and all the things in between. We want to welcome you to the session. Antoinette and I are both full-time faculty in the psychology department and the psychology program of the Department of Behavioral Studies at the University of Arizona Global Campus. Some of you may know this speaker already, Brittany Williamson. So please in the chat, join us in welcoming her. And Brittany is going to talk to us today about the Safe Zone and some of the programs that she manages in the military academic department. So with that, I am going to go on mute and turn it over to you, Brittany.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me today. I am very excited to talk about the SAFEZONE Project. The first thing that I really want to say about this project is that it's not mine. It is a project that is uncopyrighted and available to any person who ever wants to use it. I have the website in the at the end of the PowerPoint for anybody to access it. MAPI has put a participation packet in the chat if you guys would like to download that and follow along with me, and then we can get started. So this training is normally normally a 2-hour training, so I have condensed a lot of it, but the participation packet will have all of the information that is normally gone over in the 2-hour presentation. So I just wanted to make you guys aware there are a lot of things that are in that packet that are really beneficial and useful, but I have not included them in this presentation just for the sake of time. With that, I will start. So the bulk of what SAFEZONE Project is it is an LGBTQ awareness and ally training. It is an opportunity to learn about the LGBTQ plus identities, gender, sexuality, and examine prejudice, assumptions, and privilege. But the overall goal is to make every space a safe space and inclusive space, even in our classrooms and even online. We want to make sure that all people are welcome wherever we are. So here's just a little bit of the agenda and the overview of what we will do today. So I will first fully introduce myself again. So again, my name is Brittany Williamson. My pronouns are she, her. My gender is female. My gender identity is female. My sexual orientation is pansexual, which means I am attracted to all people, no matter their gender identity or gender assigned at birth. I was married to a man for 8 years. Before being married, I dated women. And since divorce, I have also dated women. So basically, I like people, and whatever parts they have doesn't really matter. I am attracted to personality. And that is a little bit about me. My position here is I am a military academic advisor. And so I talk to people all day on the phone. I talk to students in different parts of the world. And I don't necessarily know who I'm talking to based on, I have a screen in front of me that tells me their name and the gender that they were assigned at birth. But just because of what the screen says doesn't tell me a lot about the person. So I like to try to poke and prod and figure out a little bit about the person, but also just making sure that that person is comfortable wherever we are and sharing who they are. They don't necessarily have to tell me anything personal about themselves, but I am going to do my best to make them feel comfortable doing all of those things. This next slide is just a couple of the gender norms for today. So I do ask that you be smarter than your phone. Just we can all take it. This is a short session, so if you could all just take a second to put your phone down and just kind of go through the packet and really just examine things. If you have any questions, feel free to ask questions at any point. You can post in the chat. You can chime in live and ask the questions. Number 3 is our Vegas rule. This is a great rule. It's slightly modified though. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Same thing here. What happens here, what we say here stays here, but what we learn here does not stay here. We want to keep everybody safe. We want to take the learnings of today, bring it out to the world. I do ask that you laugh. Sometimes it's hard. I appreciate you guys posting in the chat, doing whatever. This training is going to be fun. We'll do our best to. I'll do my best to keep it upbeat. I don't like to. There is some activities in it, so at some point it will not be just me talking. But if you have something to say, please say it. And then if you are a person who, so share the airtime. If you're a person who asks a lot of questions and you're the only person asking questions, please continue. But if you're somebody who doesn't ask questions, please ask questions. If you have a question, somebody else in this group probably has the same question. So please be that person to ask. And reserve the right to change your mind. You might come into this thinking, this is what I think, and I know that I'm right. And that could be true. You could very well be right. But don't come into it thinking, this is what I know, so I'm going to stay this. If you learn something new today, then be okay with change. So if you we're going to go to the first, or actually I saw a question in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and address that. So Angel asked if I've ever accidentally offended someone, and how did you handle the worst experience and the best experience? So I guess I didn't say this in my intro, but I am from Louisiana. I'm sure you could tell by that I have an accent. So it is very normal for us to say yes ma'am, yes sir, and there are not good gender neutral terms for those. So I have very much offended somebody, and have said yes sir to a person that was not a sir, or yes ma'am to somebody who did not believe that they should be ma'amed. And so typically the easiest thing to do whenever you offend somebody is to apologize, right? I tell my kids all the time that it's really not that hard to just not be a bad person. And so if somebody's offended, whether it's on purpose or accidental, the best course of action is to apologize. Let them know that you didn't mean anything by it. Ask what they would prefer. And typically, if you take that extra step to apologize and ask why it offended them, then you usually get a pretty positive reaction from that. And so I really just think it's the tone in which you say things, the inflection in your voice, and just the understanding that you offer people is probably the biggest. It goes the furthest with people. A lot of people, especially whenever you're in a community of people who have traditionally been attacked, it's easy to see attacks from every direction. But if you approach it with understanding and empathy, then it tends to go over pretty well. So if you all will flip to page 4, if you'll go to page 4 in the packet, you'll have some questions. So first impressions of LGBTQ people. And so I just want to go through some of these questions, and or I just want you guys to go through these questions and just kind of, we're going to do it quick because we don't have a lot of time, but so just kind of get an idea. And if anybody would like to answer any of those questions, please feel free to pop in and give me an answer or post in the chat and I can read it for you guys. But the first question is, when's the first time that you can remember learning that some people are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or queer? I'm going to go ahead and go to the next question just because for the sake of time. So the next question is, and then after that, we'll go through kind of everything else. So where did most of the influence of your initial impressions and understanding of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and queer people come from? Did you learn from family, friends, television, books, news, church? I see classmates in church, family. I think it's really interesting that church is where you would learn about it, especially if from the South. Whenever I learn about it in church, it's never good. Elementary school, some older kids hurling slurs, absolutely. When is the first time you can remember learning that some people are transgender? For me, this one was probably, I was probably in high school, honestly. It's probably a lot older than a typical person. 23 when you met somebody who was transgender for the first time. Where did most of the influence for your initial impressions and understanding of transgender people come from? My mom telling me about what a drag show was. So typically people in a drag show are not transgender. There are some people who perform in drag shows who actually identify as straight males. They just enjoy dressing up. If you've ever been to a drag show, they are a great time. Just because they like to have a good time doesn't necessarily determine their identity or their sexual preference. Transgender had heard of it but didn't know what it was. I assumed it was the same as lesbian. Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. And then the last question, Rocky Horror Picture Show. Yeah, love that. I actually was in college the first time I watched that, which is really sad to say. And then the last question is just, how are your impressions and understanding of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer questioning people changed or evolved throughout your life? So just for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead. This next part is going to be on page 8, I believe, of your guide. This is just an inclusive languages. So some of the things that, this one's just good to have. I'm going to go ahead and skip this one just for the sake of time instead of reading through it. And then the next one is really an activity. But this is the LGBTQ. It's an acronym. It's meant to encompass a whole bunch of diverse sexualities and genders. Folks often refer to the Q for standing for queer. Queer is the umbrella term under which a whole bunch of identities. Let's see. This is helpful because lesbian, gay, and bisexual aren't the only marginalized sexualities, and transgender isn't the only gender identity. In fact, there are many more. The participant packet you have will expound upon those a little bit more. But basically, queer is the umbrella term. So if you're looking for a term that will encompass everybody, queer is the safe term. The vocabulary part is very, very nice to have. There is so many things in that portion that really just gives you a lot to think about. There are some words in there that you've probably never heard. But just know that there is a comprehensive list in that packet, which is why I wanted to share that. And so I just want to take a second to see if you guys can identify where each of these descriptions go. And so the first one is gender identity. So if you're, it gives you the heart. So the gender identity is your brain, right? Your identity. Attraction, you're romantically attracted or sexually attractive. There are some people who are not sexually attracted to anyone. There are also people who are not romantically attracted to another individual. Anatomical sex is the sex that you were born with. And then gender expression is how your outward appearance. So that I included the next part as well, so it'll show you. The gender identity is your womanness or mainness. The gender expression is whether you present more feminine or masculine. Your anatomical sex is whether you're female, you were born female or male. That is the end of the slides. Does anybody have any questions? I'll read through the chat and see if I can answer some of the questions. Personally prefer the term queer because it feels more inclusive, but I've also come across various folks who take offense to it. In your experience, is this a regional influence? So I think the time, in my experience, the term queer was used negatively previously. Like when I was younger, I remember thinking the word queer was bad. But as the world has evolved and as the LGBTQ community has grown and become more comfortable, queer has turned into the universally accepted word. Sometimes the Q is considered questioning. So it really encompasses all people. So I see a question that says, does anyone have a good term for non-binary offspring instead of daughter or son? I would personally just ask your child what they want to be called, and what they want you to say to other people. There is the gender neutral term for nieces and nephews is nibbling. I call all my nieces and nephews nibbling just because it's a fun word to say. But if your child prefers something different, then I would just let them tell you what you want to be called. That's the easiest thing. And the biggest thing about all of this information, all of the vocabulary, is that they're general terms. They're not specific. So if somebody has something else that they prefer, then that's absolutely within their right. I prefer ma'am, but that doesn't mean that. I have a twin sister who is a lesbian, and if she doesn't prefer ma'am, then I'm not going to call her ma'am. It just kind of depends. And I think that's the best way to deal with a person in general, not only with their gender identity, but just in general, as letting them tell you who they are and then accepting them no matter which way they come. I'm a strong proponent of feelings are feelings, and it's not hard to let others have their feelings. So like I said, Safe Zone is it's a national thing. It's available to anyone. I have the website here. If anybody would like to go to it, I can type that in the chat. Awesome. And then does anybody have any extra questions? The last thing I want to say is I would encourage everybody to put their pronouns in their email signatures if you don't have it already, because it just having it there just shows any student that you made a conscious thought to put it there, so it opens up the space to be a safe space. Same thing with Canvas Classroom or your Zoom link. All right, Elizabeth, thank you so much.
You bet. Okay, thank you so much. We really appreciate your insights, Brittany. I think this is a very important and timely topic in our country right now. So all of you, thank you for joining us. We really hope you found this presentation and conversation helpful and inspiring. Dr. Vic has posted in the chat links to the next session. So you can just click from there and go right on to the next session. And with that, we will conclude this session. Thanks again, Brittany. That was very insightful and informative. Take care, everybody.